Like, I believe in a consciousness that exists, that all things have a consciousness, and that all things are interconnected, maybe on different levels or whatever, and we definitely can't understand the concept of even what I'm saying, but...
Are you kind of saying, like, the perception and consciousness itself is... the thing seeing out of your eyes is the same thing seeing out of my eyes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Willy Roberts and Nathan Capisser are the same people, because what that is Willy Roberts is a name that's given to a specific form that is playing out in 4 dimensions, the fourth being time, you know, like...
Yeah. I mean, you know, in my mind, I grew up so materialistic that I don't want to let go of this life. I feel like my anxiety comes from not wanting to die. Because in first grade, I watched Poltergeist, and I haven't slept since. And I had this idea in my head that there was a finality, and I wanted to hold on to that.
Here's a good metaphor, I think, to compare it. Like, if it's like a board that you poked holes in and shone one light bulb behind it, but then you labeled each of those holes like Willy, Nathan, Craig, who's not here right now, Wade, who's not here right now. Those are each their own individual holes, and the light shining through them is its own individual beam of light that you can't confuse with a different beam of light, but in the very same way they are the same light.
That's a great analogy. I love that. Like I guess what I think I believe is that this is an experience that we have as a learning tool. And I say that because when I look at near-death, when you listen to near-death experiences, they can perceive things without their physical senses. So how can I be me without the sin? How can I be me? That's what I grew up with. How can I be me without my physical senses? What am I, and how am I perceiving things? And maybe this is, and that's the other thing. When you try to figure out why, it's like you have to. There's too many big jobs here tonight. It's like, it's like, right.
In the beginning, there was nothing. And then God said, hey, who turned out the lights? Oh yeah, me, God. God needed a place to sit down, so they created the earth for which to sit upon. What happened next is a matter of scholarly and decidedly unscholarly debate. Bing, bang, boom, you throw some trees over here, throw some water over there. Next thing you know, we're running around, paying taxes and dying. Where was I going with this? Anywho, in nomine patri, love thy neighbor, but not too much, yada yada, amen. Hey, if any of you was listening to the game, and I know there was someone out there, catch up with me at confessional. I'm looking at you, Jim. Deuces. Pope out, Pope out, Pope out, Pope out.
What's good, Craig? What's really good? I'm Nathan K.
And I'm the Craig that he was talking about, Craig Lewis.
And you're listening to Fair Enough Podcast.
That's right.
That's right.
And Willy is back in the secret room today. So good.
It wasn't today, but
well, I mean, we'll put it together.
It's in continuity. It's today, the day that this podcast is released. That's right. We're back. WW all the way from secretroommultimedia.com.
Secretroommultimedia.com.
And Willy's back from Starburns Audio.
The podcast, Real Life Sci-Fi. He's half of it.
1/3 of each episode and half of the podcast as a whole. Real Life Sci-Fi with Wade and Willy. We've plugged it before. We've been on the podcast before, and it was a lot of fun. And we're happy to have Willy back for the 3rd time.
Is that accurate?
I think it's the third time. The third time on Fair Enough.
Okay, then.
And they say that there's 2 things you don't talk about. Well, that's what they used to say. Now there's like 30 things you don't talk about. It used to be religion and politics. Now it's like religion, politics, gender, race.
That's what you were going for.
I say there's nothing you don't talk about. Always talk about it.
Yeah, just don't be a dick.
At least not intentionally. Like, I guess we all can't, none of us can help accidentally offending somebody every once in a while. Like,
that's life, dude.
Yeah, and if so, like, the worst that could happen when you're talking about religion and stuff is you accidentally offend someone or hurt somebody's feelings. And if that happens, if you're on the receiving end, like, let them know. I'm not saying, oh, it's no big deal. Like, sure, sometimes things hurt. Let someone know the worst that could happen is you open yourself up to learn.
No, but see, you've challenged my whole worldview.
Well, yeah, then I guess the worst that could happen is you either inspire someone to challenge their own worldview
or set them down the rabbit hole even further.
Or you open yourself up to be vulnerable, to be corrected, and learn from your mistakes.
I hope it's one of them.
One or the other.
As you can guess, today's topic is religion, well, or God. The whole idea of God, how God plays out in people's world views.
God as a concept, yeah.
God as a concept. Thank you.
Me and Willy sat down and had a discussion about just God, our own views on God. I don't want to use the word beliefs because I don't like that word, and I know a lot of people think that's dumb that I don't like it.
Save the beliefs for aliens.
It's okay. It's my prerogative to not like that word. Why do my feelings on the word beliefs have to be in line with your feelings on the word beliefs?
Because then you would be different, and that is a problem.
God forbid.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah, no, God does forbid it.
God does forbid it. Yes.
In a lot of people's belief structures. And that's fine. Like, if you disagree, we welcome you to please interact with us, hit us up. Like, just don't attack us. Like, that's all we're asking. This is
let me attack you and don't attack us.
Even if, hey, we're comedians, okay? We may get brash and irreverent at times.
It's not to say if it helps you get through your daily life, do it. Use it.
It's not intended as an attack. And what I'm saying is not, oh, grow up, don't be a baby, it's just jokes. No, I'm saying, if I for real did offend you, or if you think I missed the mark, or you disagree with me, or Willy, or Craig, reach out to us. We'd love to have that conversation. I don't mean we'd love to be apologists for our own misgivings, but if I'm wrong, I'm not big enough to. I'm not too big to to swallow my pride and be like, yeah, my bad.
Absolutely, because you're a cuck. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. See, this is what we're talking about here, right? Already with it. No, and my personal intentions, and I'm sure Nathan's as well. I don't want to speak for you, but I can assume that our intentions are not to belittle your whole belief system and structure. If it works for you, that's great. Just don't use it to promote bigotry against others, I guess.
Yeah, or
that's the only thing I have a problem with.
Or rather, if you are doing that, I guess that's your prerogative. But then if you better be open to criticism from us. If you're somehow not open to criticism from us, and yet you're using your belief system to criticize others, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
Yeah. What he said, because I will demand an apology. I want you to apologize.
Well, no, it's just like, oh, word, you were offended by us, but you used the FAG word, and you're
get ready for the clapbacks.
You called me a fucking cuck, and you're offended by something we said. Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
Exactly. Okay, I see. This is gonna go one way versus the other.
I'm a proud snowflake.
So you're easily triggered, or you're beautiful?
You know what I'm pissed is that modern discourse has tarnished 2 of my favorite words.
Snowflake?
Twilight and snowflake. What am I going to name my cats now? What am I going to name my cats when I finally get a black one and a white one to live together in harmony?
Yin and yang.
Okay, fine.
It depends on the color of the cats, honestly. It really does, and that sounds bad.
Melania and Michelle.
Oh. Oh, we're not scraping the bottom, but we're pushing the barrel right over.
I don't even know if that joke was okay. That was a racist joke. I'm sorry for that.
We're just like kicking
like
the
I
barrel
said,
into the river.
I admit it. I was wrong. That was inappropriate and not called for and not funny.
It was shocking, though. Had shock value, or as you could say, Howard Stern's entire career. Anyways. God, what's up with him?
God, what's up with the...
or them. I
God,
wasn't finished.
It's an interesting subject. I think whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, or are agnostic on the matter, I think it's a subject that not talking about it or coming into a conversation about it being the subject. I'm not referring to God as an it. So
let's not even dwell with this thing, or else we're going to get stuck with this entire
not
time.
Talking about God is the subject of God. You'd be remiss to not discuss it, or remiss to enter a conversation about that subject matter with a closed mind, or determined to prove what you want to prove and not, be open to the entire conversation as a whole.
Right. Yeah, totally. If you close the borders of your mind, you will never be able to be open to expansion, or at least understanding of that which you know nothing of.
Ooh, geez, Mr. $5 words over there.
I'm not talking in code. Wink, wink.
Where'd you get those words? Snowflake?
No. Closed and open? I got them from a sign off a market.
They're not. Yeah, I hate that. I hate when you just use a regular ass fucking word and people are like, oh, big words. You're like, fuck you, it's 5 letters.
Dude, I'm sorry I graduated high school.
I've read a fucking book before. My God, I'm sorry.
Ooh, la-di-da, Mr. carries a book around with him. What do you want to be, a librarian? Fucking open your mind. But anyways, God, open and closed. That's the end of that chapter. Move it on. Wrap it up.
By the end of this podcast, you'll never have to discuss or think about God again. We'll have just like shut the book on it. There won't be any need anymore.
Or you can just hate me.
Me and Willy and Craig we got this, man.
Covered.
We got this. By the end of this, everyone will be the same religion. By the end of this podcast, everyone will just agree.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot deeper than I was ready for. Are we going to call it Unitarianism?
You know what, Craig? You can't change hearts and minds overnight, but you got to start somewhere.
Definitely over one podcast. So I'm sure the big question is, Craig, what do you believe in?
That is the big question. That's what everyone's like, the thought on everyone's mind. What does Craig Lewis of Fair Enough Podcast believe
lots of pressure.
in?
I guess what my official response is, it's none of your fucking business.
Well, to be fair, no one's actually asked.
I'm sure they have. No, I was born and raised a Christian by my family who is still Christian. Definitely my views have changed a lot in the last 10 or so years.
Okay, what does that mean? Like my family, you're born and raised Christian could mean like, my mom believes in God. She heard something about Jesus once and she's like, yeah, I guess that's me.
Well, okay. So,
or it could mean we went to church every Sunday, or it could mean like, no, I wasn't allowed to watch TV.
Well, there's a little mix of everything in there.
All right, cool.
I guess let's start from the beginning, eh?
All right.
Mary Baker Eddy once said, no, I'm kidding. She's the founder of Christian Science, which is what my family technically is, even though I don't believe so because they aren't anything like how
they're nothing like Michael Keaton.
Right. I guess not. No, they're not Batman. So, no.
Or not Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer. Yeah. Wow, I got my Batmans mixed up.
They're still not Batman.
It's Val Kilmer that's the Christian Scientist, right?
Maybe?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Val Kilmer.
I haven't paid too much attention to it.
Wow, I got my Batmans mixed up, man.
Which is sad because those are two very different Batmans, but
completely different actors that I'm familiar with outside of their roles as Batman.
Anyways, the way it's portrayed in like television and in the media is like oh, you don't believe in medicine, so you let your kids die and you don't bring them to the doctors. Like, I went to the doctors as a kid, you know, like it was just this belief that prayer helped. But, but they used prayer along with medicine. Whatever. I never took a lot into it. I went to Sunday school, learned the same things as any other Christian kid in the Sunday school would. Like, you know, all the basic biblical stories and stuff. Had the choice, at least, not to go to church as a teenager. My parents didn't go. We went with my grandparents. But they're always like, my mom's like, yeah, Jesus, you know, she believes, but she doesn't practice, I guess.
Okay.
Like, ever since then, I've always wondered and questioned. Maybe it's because I wasn't forced to do it, so I wasn't like indoctrinated into anything. I don't want to say that people that believe in the faith or any other faith and go to church regularly are indoctrinated. That's not what I mean to say. What I'm saying is I was allowed to have an open, available mind to everything, which is a good thing.
Yeah, well, there are people out there that are like indoctrinated into belief systems.
Yes,
it doesn't mean that
absolutely.
you're one of them if you're listening and you're feeling attacked.
Don't feel attacked. Unless you're in Scientology, then fuck you. No.
Yeah, guilty conscience much?
Right? Doth project much? So I always had this belief of, you know, like Jesus and God and the afterlife and, you know, other things. And I always thought I was fascinated by the stories of hell and demons and stuff like that. As more of a horror fan, I guess.
I guess I'm religious, you know? I mean, Ozzy's...
I love horror, you know? Yeah. Ghosts can't exist without, like, the further keeping them back.
Satan's pretty scary. I don't want to run into him in a dark alley. Right? I'll tell you what.
Right. He's the horns and everything. Just real imagery. It's
Give me
great.
the heebie-jeebies.
Heebies and jeebies. Both of them.
That motherfucker Satan.
So I just always consider myself religious, but not practicing and not belonging to any church because I was kind of anti-church, rebellious, but like I still wasn't like, nope, that's not real. You know, I was still like, yeah, totally real. It's just like these guys all got it wrong. You know, and so I went through life a lot like that. And there's just in the past few years more so, like with all the things that happened that are now being connected politically with Christianity in general. And I guess it's more on an evangelical side, but I'm just like, I really can't support anything that's like this. If you're using, like, you're literally just like ignoring parts of the Bible and using other parts of the Bible to justify bigotry, and that's become a huge problem with me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's an individual's choices too, though. I mean, there definitely are parts of the Bible that are problematic.
And you know, I always thought like, oh, if it was created by God, if the Bible was written by God, you know, like people wrote the Bible.
Yeah,
people wrote the Bible, and you're like, so. How did God talk to? Oh,
well,
I mean, maybe it was just like they were trying to use it to. Maybe they were trying to use it to like make sure people don't attack the king.
Well, I mean, it's a common like belief in Christianity that like it was divinely inspired and planned, like what would be written in the Bible and what books would end up being put together. But it was, you know, like there was
which ones you decided to follow and which ones you didn't decide to follow.
In early Christian circles, there was just like hundreds of Christian texts, you know, just like articles you'd read online. Like people would be writing new shit all the time.
But so, really, like come on, somebody just wrote that.
Well, no, there was there were a bunch of different people writing stuff about Christian belief. And then
collected.
In Rome, they had the Council of Nicaea, and they were like, yo, there's all these different churches. The state could be stronger and the church could be stronger if we figured this out, got a united belief system together, picked which texts are unanimous, put them together in a nice little book, you know, put it in the drawers in our hotels and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they...
You sell it. You sell it.
Put it on the lunchbox.
Give it away for free, you silly.
Yeah, and so they didn't... any text that everybody didn't agree on didn't make the cut, and they
it's crazy that everybody agreed on it because, like, you know, you got like wild things like from Corinthians all the way to like Roman and John and Paul and Psalms, you know, and
I mean, it's just like when you look at a list of like, I want to get into Batman. What stories do I read? And they list like, you know, the Batman canon, the classical Batman canon of like...
You got to ignore Genesis because that really throws a wrench into Psalms.
Well, yeah, but if you really want, you know, you read year one.
You know, eventually just think it's an alt-universe type thing.
Well, I mean, you know, you read year one, you read like Long Halloween, you read all the classics, Dark Knight Returns, and then like if you want, there's all these other books if you prefer. There's certain people that are like, oh no, this is also a classic.
So
well, you got to read Court of Owls, you know.
The rest of it is the Silmarillion of Batman.
The Silmarillion?
Silmarillion.
The Silmarillion?
The Silmarillion. I can't speak.
The Silmarillion. It's similar to the Silmarillion, but...
They're, as you can say, they're almost identical. Yeah, so I always questioned, oh, really? God talked to these people and told them these divine stories? Like, prove it. And I know that's like really hard. Like, oh, you got to have faith and belief. And I'm just like, oh, now I kind of feel like a sucker.
Well, yeah, you know? I remember debating somebody once when I was like, well, what about, like, you know that historically, like, you know, the Emperor of Rome, like, and they're like, well, yeah, but it was all inspired by God. Like, what they chose to do was planned out and inspired by God. And I'm like, okay. And then King James, though, like, changed the entire language of the Bible even, like, years later. And, like, yeah, that was inspired by God and planned. That was supposed to happen eventually. So that they would make the Bible into its final, like, perfect form or whatever. It's like, you haven't seen its final form yet. What if Barack Obama decided he was going to rewrite the Bible and do a more modern audience that made sense? And they're like, no, that's evil. That's horrible. And I'm like, well, why? Why then is it okay when the Emperor of Rome did it, but when Barack Obama decides to do it, it's evil, horrible, he shouldn't do it, God didn't plan that? Like, what do you mean? What, God didn't plan that? Like, that was our free will.
Oh, just because you decided you don't like that now? Like, it can't be the thing that happened? Like, so what, were they just like sheeple back then? They were like, oh yeah, slavery is right.
What do you mean back then?
Still now.
No, I don't know. And I don't mean to insult anyone if that's what you believe. Again, you can believe that certain things are divinely inspired and certain things aren't. Although
if
I
you
can't
want, we
wrap
have
my
to
head
talk
around
about
that.
this, though.
If God's all powerful, how are certain things not divinely inspired?
Probably because Yeah, he just like pokes his head in every once in a while. But like we've hit a part in the world that if all this is true and things were divinely inspired, they won't be addressed now because people are too skeptical of things being new and coming to fruition. Like they always said like Jesus will return, you know, one day. And just like, well, if he did, he's in a fucking mental institution because nobody believes him.
Well, this is also... Everything we're saying is uniquely focused on like Christian society and culture. And I think the topic of God is bigger than Christianity. And I think it's bigger than deity, than this idea of deity and a belief in a central deity figure or a bunch of deity figures. Like, I think there's something more there. I don't want to get too into that because, of course, I'm going to discuss it later on the podcast.
And I'm absolutely glad that you and Willy did do that.
And I just want to make it clear. I just want to make clear to anybody listening that this isn't an exclusively like Christian discussion, that this is much bigger than that. And I don't mean to, again, I'm not trying to say like Christianity is a small little tiny baby topic compared to what we, I'm just saying this is it's more all encompassing. I think the topic of God transcends Christianity. There's Islam, there's even Buddhism. I know they don't have a God in Buddhism, but it doesn't mean that there aren't Buddhist views on the subject.
Geez, Nathan, I guess if we're going to really tackle this subject, we got to use those liberal kids' gloves. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, no,
I feel like... But
I don't want someone to turn this off if they're like, oh, I thought this was going to be a more broad conversation and not just Christian. I'm not trying to use kid gloves. I'm just like, don't worry, guys. We're not just talking about the Bible, in case you are like...
Well, stay tuned. I haven't gotten to my like exploration of religion. Like, now I'm just finally questioning what I used to know.
Just now, actually,
just now.
Throughout the course of this introduction.
This part of the story, I'm learning as we go. I'm open mind. But I'm always learning. Yeah, I think now I would have to say at best I'm agnostic. I probably lean a little more towards the atheistic side. Just because there's a lot of things that come to my mind are like, well, we're putting these thoughts to give our lives meaning and purpose. And I think that maybe I should just focus on using this time I have here to be decent, you know, to not create issues for other people that I have to live in this world with, not be a problem, be part of not just a solution, but like at least not make people's lives hard. Because whether you have a religion that you cling to or not that keeps you focused on the afterlife or the here and now, this world's hard enough as it is trying to get through it on our own. Let's not make it a problem for others.
Yeah, I'm striving. What I strive to do is like I want to pull my own weight. like socially, like in the broad spectrum, and like I would aspire to do a little bit more, pull just a little bit more than my own weight. Because if we're all pulling just a little bit more than our own weight, that's what progresses society. You know what I mean? When you pull more than your own weight.
There's a lot of aggression feeling happening.
If you're not pulling your own weight, other people who are pulling more than their own weight are working harder to support you. You know?
They're going to get tired.
And we all have to at certain points in our life, whether it's because you're young and establishing yourself, or you're sick, or you're, going through some bad times. That's what society's for. So no shame when you're not pulling your weight, but always aspire to,
Right. Which is also to say, like, whatever religion you decide and choose to, as long as we're all committed to the same goal of progressing society forward, whatever you use to choose to help keep you going, great. I'm glad that it's helping you be a productive member of this world.
Yeah, to not like unfairly just like hurt other people, I think is even because Satanists might be like, yo, fuck progressing society, and even Buddhists might be like, yo, fuck progressing society, but they still, I think, have a mentality of like, yeah, I think the world's a better place when most people are trying not to like unnecessarily hurt other people.
Right.
And trying to even check themselves when they just reactionarily, I can't think of the word, but like gut instinct, like trigger reflexively, just like be a jerk.
Yeah, in a defensive manner or even like an aggressive manner just because you don't like something. Stop, take a breath.
But so do you ever think, though, Craig, about things like, see, God could be a deity, a being that created people, that created the universe, but God could also be referring to the source of existence, or God could be referring to the creative force of the universe, or God could be referring to the sum totality of all parts of the universe. Like, so do you ever think about things like that?
Always. I'm like, because like I said, I would have to say I'm pretty much agnostic.
So wait, are you joking when you say always, or you mean no? You really do.
No, like, is it weighing currently on my brain at all moments of the day? No, but like, yes, I think of like God is nature. God could be just like all of the nanites. Oh, fuck, I don't know what I'm talking
nanites.
Like all the atoms.
God is midichlorians.
And all the midichlorians. Like God is midichlorians, man. No, all like everything that's wound together is all God. We're all God.
We're working on the prequel testament. God was midichlorians all along.
Maybe, sure, I don't know. It makes sense. You drive a very good argument for it.
So yeah, I don't know. That's what I think is fun, and that's kind of what we get into. Those who aren't familiar with Willy, you really ought to check out Real Life Sci-Fi. Look it up. We'll talk more about it at the end of the podcast.
He is a stitch.
Yeah, he is. He's
right in my gut.
Well, yeah, he's really funny, and he's really thoughtful, and he thinks a lot, and
he's got a very deep mind, and he likes to go on tangents, but he's usually going somewhere with them.
He has the remarkable superpower of being able to turn any conversation into a conversation about aliens.
Yes, amazing. And I would say that's second best superpower ever, next to the Zach Morris timeout.
You could say he has the superpower to alienate any conversation. And I love it.
Harsh, bro.
Like, no, I mean alienate. Like, I'm not saying into a conversation about aliens. It's been alienated.
I get that. It was a pun.
You took the alien ray gun and you were like...
I'm not saying that God is aliens, but God is aliens.
I'm not saying that God is aliens, but aliens are God,
man.
Yeah, so as is to be expected, we dip our toes into the alien pool a little bit, but
not to be confused with the one from the Ridley Scott series with Prometheus and
no,
and alien one.
We don't talk about that at all.
Because you said aliens and God, and like immediately I'm just like Prometheus.
So yeah, it was really fun and fascinating, and as usual, there's so much ground to cover that there's no way we could cover it in one podcast. But I hope you at least have fun. We'll be back here at the end to talk about everything we didn't cover in the conversation. Every last thing.
Well, we'll meet you here.
This ought to be fun. Okay, so there is a question that people get asked all the time, which I never know how to answer, and when I try to answer it, people act like I'm giving them a cop-out answer. And I'm really curious. It's not a question I ever like to ask people, because it's not a question that makes any sense to me. I don't know how to answer the question, but I'm curious how you answer it, so I'm just going to ask. Do you believe in God? I put you on the spot right off the bat.
Yeah, no, it's great. I grew up believing in God, and then it went away, and now I've been redefining what that is, and I feel like I don't know if this is hopeful thinking, but I'm going under the idea that I am a God.
Okay.
And that the reason why power of the mind works is because we're actually more connected to the universe in a lot more different ways, metaphysical, in all these different ways, to where we actually do have a power. And it's weird because it's like, whatever, if you want to believe something, it's easy to come up with your own definitions and all this stuff. But I feel, I don't know, not because of this short, and I forget the name of it, which is funny, but I watched this short where and it was terrible, but basically, if you were a god and you were trying to train someone else how to be a god, the idea is that you would learn by being everyone throughout the existence of humanity. So like you are everyone. You go through in and out different times, but you are everyone. So everyone you interact with is a different version of yourself. And I'm not saying I just believe that. It's just an interesting idea, because I always had issues with the definition of God. I grew up Baptist in small town Colorado, all powerful, all knowing, all everywhere. Just weirded me out so much, because I really took that abstract idea and tried to make sense of it, And the only thing I could come up with was God is energy. The only way you can be everything is to be the fabric of the cosmos, is to be everything.
But then when I totally get where you're coming from, and that's the tough thing about talking about these things, because you talk to a lot of progressively minded people like ourselves, and like they come to that like, well, I mean, sure, but like God is like some type of energy. But to me, the mere concept of God must, like, by definition, exceed the concept of energy, because energy is right, like, but again, we don't have the language to deal with it. Now what you're saying actually vibes really, really well with me. I feel like the problem is, what does the word God mean? And sure, that's a different thing for so many different people, but if
God is fighting words.
Yeah, right. Why does it have to be fighting words? But I think we've really lost something with our insistence on associating the word God with deity, and almost always a very specific deity, Jehovah. Like, I get into an argument with any atheist, and no matter how many times you try to redefine what you mean when you say the word God, they'll say, well, there's no big man in the clouds. Oh, okay, but that's not what I'm talking about.
And that this is what's weird. I'm going to cut you off, like, obviously, which is fine. I just do that, whatever.
Go right ahead.
But anytime you have a conversation about something that somebody believes, you almost have to, like, say what you believe. You have to, like, see what level you each are on. And then a lot of people tend to judge people if they're at a point that you've already surpassed. Oh, I don't believe in God anymore. You'll get there maybe one day. You know what I mean? It's like when you progress, you assume everyone else is not. And the difference is everyone is at such a different point that, like, the only way to really have a conversation is to listen. And most people don't listen. They have their agenda. they have to try to prove, and I don't want to spend the episode complaining about people, but if you can't have a conversation with someone about their beliefs, then you shouldn't ever try to have. I mean, I don't mean to say ever, but it's like they are stuck in their head with their own beliefs. Whether they have issues or not, they're stuck. And, we used to get in arguments in high school about the best band in the world, And I was like, this is, no matter what, this is so arbitrary. Your proof comes from concert sales and ticket, all these different random things, albums released and how popular they were. And everyone would come up with these good arguments. And I was like, I will never agree with you, no matter what. I'm listening to you, but I'll never agree with you.
It is weird. I mean, That's one of the reasons the question bothers me. There's a few of them, but belief is one of them. I just don't like the word believe, and I know that sounds cop-outy also, but to me, just the mere concept of like you are believing in something, just the audacity to believe is an odd thing to me, because it's inherent, like it's built into the word that it's not something you have evidence for in a way, and which is not to say that you shouldn't have faith in certain things or that you shouldn't assume certain things, or but I don't believe that I'm talking to you right now. It's just self-evident. That we're having a conversation. I don't believe that I'm awake right now. It's just self-evident.
And that's the weird thing.
In the same way,
go on.
Oh, yeah, sorry. But I mean, in the same way, like my thoughts about the concept of God, I can't say I believe in God because, well, on one level, does God exist? Well, how could the source of existence be something that exists? But also, I can't just say, oh, God doesn't exist if I'm saying, well, of course the source of existence wouldn't be something that exists, but is it non-existent? And now we're just in a logic trap. So there's one reason. But another reason is that it's not a belief. It's a way of looking at the world and deducing something that to me seems self-evident, and it's not, and asking whether or not God is there or whether or not there is a God is... Like when people would ask the Buddha a question that didn't make any sense, he would answer a lot of questions with the question doesn't fit the case, which is just like there is no answer to that question because like you're not asking your question is contradicting itself almost. I don't know. Yeah.
I like those, and in that same vein, it's like this, I'm just going to quote a few things that I was looking up, like Plato said, if God didn't exist, man would invent him. Okay, sure, that makes sense. Einstein, here's someone who is a voice of science, but he was very religious and he wanted to see the universe the way God did. So that's a weird thing where it made him see the universe more abstractly. And then Terence McKenna, he's studied religions and cultures and stuff, and he's saying that shamanism is someone trying to interpret life who has seen the end. And that I just love that idea. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of Seth. Seth is this entity that somebody channeled in the 70s. I think her name was Jody Roberts.
Okay.
And anyways, here's this channeled being trying to explain existence to us. And like whether you believe it or not, it's just a fabulous, fantastic listen because he brings up ideas that I love to think about. They're so abstract, and he was like, well, you guys need to have a beginning and an end, but there is no beginning and there is no end, and I like that. Those are the concepts that blow my mind away because when I think of infinity, I'm like infinity only exists in a universe that can handle infinity. And we may not be in something that can handle infinity. So you have these things that can be... I'll tell you what I think the problem is. I think that what happened was at some point, here we are having a physical experience, a physical existence. And when science took over, science became the new religion, and people will blindly believe in it because here are people that are using... Sure, you can retest it, you can... It's the only religion that has proof.
Okay.
But that proof exists on your physical senses, and I will tell you, the universe is non-physical. We even the idea. this is a bad, lame idea, but a physical, that like, I'm two physical things hitting each other. And like when you go, the smaller you go, the farther away everything is, molecules, electrons, whatever, strings, string theory. It's like, if it goes infinity one way, it goes infinity the other way, and that's mind-blowing.
The physicality, I guess, is it's an illusion that is like an emergent property, I guess, of reality, but in the way that, sure, it's real. It's not an illusion like you are hallucinating that things are solid and really you're actually just a brain in a dream state. But like, it's more like, yeah, it's so wildly different from what you like. The picture that you're able to put together by the way that the atoms you're made of interact with the other atoms, of course, produce something which is produce like an emergent property that's so constant and consistent that we call it the physical world, because it, to us, at our rate of existence, how fast we're able to perceive shit, that is the way things are. You know, things never... It never varies from that state, so it would be redundant and ridiculous for us to try to, like, incorporate it into our language, you know, or the way we interact on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. But in the same way, I mean, like that realm of physics that lies within this, whatever it is, different dimensions, dark matter, parallel dimensions, all that stuff, I think a lot of people throw into the spiritual realm and just don't even think about it. It's like, I believe in science, but none of that weird shit. And I only say that because the problem with... I'm going to ask you a question after I say this thing. Is that like...
Awesome.
When we try to talk to other people, we have to almost find out what their education is and what they believe in, you know, because, listen, I'm not going to judge anybody who didn't go to college, but when you study something specific and you try to have a conversation with someone outside of it, forget about the jargon. You're just at such a different level because you've even thought about these ideas that you can't have a conversation with someone. And so it's hard to talk about anything that is abstract because you have to get onto the same plane. My question to you now is, well, first off, I want to know if you believe in God, because you loosely answered it, but my question on top of that is, do you believe in life?
Whew, that's tough. So I mean, with God, I feel like I guess like the essence of what I was saying about like our attitudes towards like God, or like an atheistic attitude towards God, where it's this inability to separate the word God from deity, and generally from very specific deities, or even just deities in general. To say a deity being a being, a represented like a character, you know, as opposed to... There's like a poetic concept of God that I feel like some people don't get what you mean when you try to bring this up, but like, no, put aside your thoughts of Jehovah or any specific mythology, and just like, if you make a metaphor using the word God, a lot of times the assumption isn't that you're talking about Jehovah or Krishna or anything, but the concept of like that which transcends existence is, you know, the source of existence, if it's represented as a poetic concept and anthropomorphized. Like, the ability to be able to be like, to have that as a concept and to not just start arguing about deities and mythology and superstition if people try to have a conversation about God. And it's like, okay, I agree. Blindly believing in stories that are written in a book is not a smart way to go about forming a belief system. I agree. But
especially since you can't challenge those ideas.
Yeah, but on a certain level, that's a baby conversation. If we want to talk about God, I'm not trying to talk about whether the Bible stories are factually accurate.
Yeah, and you know, it's like, where are you at in your life? Do you believe in God personally right now? Sure, people will have their little bits of proof, but
you ask if I believe in life. I mean, words like that, like God and life and consciousness, they just might be interchangeable, and they might not be. But they're so hard to nail down and pin down because we haven't even nailed or pinned down any of those words to any scientific consensus. Like, what is life? We're constantly redefining what life is.
Yeah, and I'm trying to. I guess another question I have is, do you believe in like, I believe in a consciousness that exists, that all things have a consciousness, and that all things are interconnected, maybe on different levels or whatever, and we definitely can't understand the concept of even what I'm saying, but
can I ask you if this, are you kind of saying like the perception and consciousness itself is the thing seeing out of your eyes is the same thing seeing out of my eyes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Willy Roberts and Nathan Capisser are the same people, because what that is Willy Roberts is a name that's given to a specific form that is playing out in 4 dimensions, the fourth being time, like,
yeah.
Just like there's no borders that define where your atoms stop and the atoms next to you begin, and like what are you if you cut your arm off and replace it with an arm, like, those the whole axe handle paradigm. And
yeah. I mean, in my mind, I grew up so materialistic that I don't want to let go of this life. I feel like my anxiety comes from not wanting to die. Because in first grade, I watched Poltergeist, and I haven't slept since. And I had this idea in my head that there was a finality, and I wanted to hold on to that. And I'm trying to let go of these concepts, but
here's a good metaphor, I think, to compare. Like, if you have, you can say you have a garden, right? And you're like, that's the garden. And you can also say, like, that's the flower section of the garden. You've now, like, that doesn't mean that is no longer part of the whole thing and it's all the garden.
Yeah.
Or, like, so in that level, like, there is no lines between what separates things in reality. We do that for the sake of interacting with them. So yes, Willy is a different thing than Nathan, but if we look at, like, consciousness and the actual experience of consciousness, that itself might be the same thing between us. It's just being experienced by the thing called Willy and the thing called Nathan slightly differently. In the same way that if you had like a board that you poked holes in and shone one light bulb behind it, but then you labeled each of those holes like Willy, Nathan, Craig, who's not here right now, Wade, who's not here right now. Those are each their own individual holes, and the light shining through them is its own individual beam of light that you can't confuse with a different beam of light.
Yeah.
But in the very same way, they are the same light.
That's a great analogy. I love that. I guess what I think I believe is that the life outside of this is the real life, and that this is an experience that we have as a learning tool. And I say that because when I look at anything abstract in the realm of near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, and then when you I've been watching a lot of videos of kids that have reincarnated supposedly, and they'll go meet their old family and know a lot of stuff about them because they had a life with them. When I see those instances, sure, I could see that someone's whole existence, the energy of that, could be, as you were going into a baby, you could get an echo of somebody's life and then treat that as your own. And maybe reincarnation doesn't exist and you're taking in other people's lives. Maybe reincarnation does exist and we'll never understand, and we're not supposed to understand. But at no matter what, and whatever I believe in the physical realm, what I believe in the non-physical realm is that life on the outside is the experience, and because these people have these instances of near death, when you listen to near death experiences, they can perceive things without their physical senses. So how can I be me without the sin? How can I be me? That's what I grew up with. How can I be me without my physical senses? What am I, and how am I perceiving things? And that's the other thing. When you try to figure out why, it's like you have to. There's too many big jobs here tonight. It's like, it's like
right.
But if reincarnation is happening, then I think that it's not important for us to know our past or future lives, because nobody does by default. There are a few rare cases, but by default, no one actually takes their other lives with them. And like I always think too, like, I mean, I think time is a man-made concept, and when you think of time from the perspective of an atom, let's say, sure that things decay and that time still does exist within that model that we envision in our head. Time doesn't matter. And so I apply that vibrational energy to the energy of consciousness, and time doesn't matter. Do people interpret future lives? You know, everyone talks about their past lives and they don't go forward. And I think that that's just a hang-up of people, whether I believe in people who can tell you your past life or not, or all that stuff. Not a lot of people go forward, but I think that's because they're also trained mentally that doesn't exist, and so you close your mind off from that. I think the power of the mind is the secret to the universe, and our minds are way more powerful, and connecting to the soul energy is how you... Because, like, do you have any experiences of proof in your life of prayer, or do you have any weird... I say weird, but do you have any proof of anything of your life that affected your belief system, I guess you'd say?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I say, I mean, my attitude towards the God is, it's self-evident. I think it's not a belief, and I think I'm weird. I kind of consider myself atheistic, monotheistic, and polytheistic in a certain way. I mean, polytheistic seems a little excessive maybe, but monotheism and atheism, I think, stand in opposition in a beautiful, real way. I sort of don't really believe something if the opposite isn't also true in a way. Like that's yin yang. Like that's the way the universe exists. Things exist because things don't exist. Like that's... things can be cold because things can be hot. Like, that sounds so simplistic, but with a concept like God, I mean, it almost has to be something where, like, realizing there is no God, to me, is just as deep and profound as realizing everything is God. Because if everything is God, then there is no God. Of course,
dude, that's so fun, your brain.
Oh, thanks, man.
Go on.
Does that make sense, though? Like,
yeah. It's almost like, and I don't mean to bring it down into something this small, but it's like when you create the definition of something, then the opposite exists also. It's like,
yeah,
because you came up with it.
Yeah, but I mean, if everything was blue, then there's no such thing as blue, because there's no differentiation.
Yeah.
What does blue stand in contrast to? Nothing. So it's a really it's weird.
I like to think about the perceptions of other beings that exist on this earth. Like, I was reading something recently where they say they think birds might be able to see the magnetic field lines. And I'm like, yeah, like, the way to get outside of our thinking, because I like to think abstract, and it's hard to think abstract on purpose, It's like, one way is to try to look at the way other animals perceive the universe when they have different methods of perception. Like, when you see all these beached whales, all the time, sure, global warming, whatever, whatever you would attach that to, a pole shift could be happening, and they've shown proof of, like, weakened magnetic fields and changing magnetic fields. Well, any animal that migrates, they use the magnetic fields to know north and south. They don't just go to a place and remember the road to get there. I believe that they perceive the magnetic fields, and so if those are changing, that can affect them in a bad way. When you have, a bunch of animals killing themselves, there's no animal. Sure, maybe there's rare cases, but I don't think an animal is going to commit suicide, especially as a group.
Yeah,
they're not trying to kill themselves, and so I feel like it's because they perceive the universe different, and that shit is changing. The magnetic field. I think that we're due for a pole shift. because science tells me, yet I don't believe in science, but I do. It's like, you pick and choose everything you want to believe in.
Yeah, I mean, science is like the collected body of testable habits of phenomena. Like,
my issue with science is it mostly deals with, sure, if you can prove something, great, but there are a lot of things that we'll never be able to prove. And so, thus theories, but people will blindly believe in something that they've never tested for themselves. And so there's a lot of shaming going on, Shaming is, sure, a popular word, whatever, but, like, religions used to be able to shame people for not believing in their beliefs. My problem with religions is that religion is scammed spirituality. It's just such a scam. We're right. Science is doing that now by saying if you can't prove it, it doesn't exist. And then you can prove equations on paper, but I believe a lot of the things that are common knowledge don't stand up to being able to prove it. Like, for example, the speed of light, or the breaking, we can't go faster than the speed of light. Within Einstein's theories exist these constants of nature that affect these theories. And then also, what was I going to say? Hold on. I'm getting lost. I'm a little high. Okay. I'll just bring it back by talking about general relativity. Oh yeah, constants in nature. Like a lot of people have this idea that space is a vacuum, and it's like, well, our perceptions of space are still wrong. We're not even out there that much, And the way that solar systems move throughout the galaxy, whatever. I don't think that space is a vacuum. I don't think gravity is constant. I kind of don't believe in gravity. I think that the effects of gravity are the effects of the same thing that holds atoms together. It's the magnetic field. It's the magnetic powers.
It's interesting when you get into the grounding of a lot of our, like, the theories people take for granted. I choose not to have very strong feelings on a lot of that stuff because I'm like, for example, when you guys had me on Real Life Sci-Fi and you asked me about the JFK thing, and I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know enough about it either way. And Wade was sort of like, cop-out answer. And I'm like, well, sure, but do you want me to, that's the truth? In the sense that if I were to say, no, I think that's pretty fishy, and someone comes along and they're like, yeah, but that's bullshit because, and then they break down all this like, well, that's bullshit. These conspiracy theories came from here, and this happened, and you can explain that by this. I'd be like, word, well, you know what? You've clearly read about it and watched more documentaries about it and researched it way more than I have. And then if you came along and you're like, well, no, that's bullshit because of this and this, and I'd be like, well, shit, so have you. So I don't know which one of you to yield to. You both sound like you're making really good points. So I don't know. But, it's weird because I feel you saying that makes me say, I feel like most people are trying to only say things that are provable and to only say things that they can prove, within reason. But I'm like, I like to mentally explore ideas that I don't believe in. Yeah, and I don't think it's a weakness to say you don't know. That's the most scientific answer you can give, and the most religious answer you can give is, I don't know. Why does everybody feel the need to fight for a belief or cause? And I don't even mean like in a fighting way, but like any argument. What you're doing is trying to find ways to argue your point so that your point wins the argument, even if you're not looking at it as a contest or as in a negative way.
Yeah. I mean, like, take your life, like I always say this, I'm like, I don't mind being wrong. And then when I think about my life, I am offended when I'm wrong, It's like, because, and I'm only offended when I'm wrong when it comes to something that I believed in, like when you remember, like, right when the internet started, there'd be a rumor of somebody dying. Like, younger Pete from Pete and Pete, there was a rumor that he died, and it spread, and we didn't have the internet to check the facts or anything. And I felt really bad that he was dead, and then I found out he wasn't, and I was just so betrayed. I was like, I believed it because it looked real.
it's crazy too, like, because it's humbling realizing you're wrong and having it actually sink in. Like, because I really would find it hard to believe that this doesn't or hasn't happened to everyone, unless you're a very young listener and it just hasn't happened to you yet. When you're arguing with somebody and you start realizing that you are wrong, what if instead of doubling down on getting defensive, you legit did, like, just suck it up and be like, yo, I am so sorry. You know what? You're right. Like, I've actually been arguing for like 10 minutes, and you know what? I feel like legit 10 minutes ago, I kind of knew I was wrong, and I kept arguing. And like, because if you're listening and you're saying you've never done that, maybe you're right, but like, you're probably full of shit, and you probably know it. You might not even know it. You might not even have noticed, but like, it feels like it's going to suck so much to say that, but it doesn't. It actually feels so good. Give it a try.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what people are like today, but communicating emotion. I just had a kid. He's 5 months old, and I'm trying to think of like what's really important to communicate, and I'm like, I've always been emotionally repressed, and our family didn't really talk, and I'm like, oh, that's important to me to communicate emotions, and I'm like, because I personally think that your emotions exist on some plane that can affect other people. We can prove that we have our own energy fields that and our energy. It's weird because when you say energy and you're meaning like your positive energy, there's so many different energies, but it's like, our energy affects other people.
All right. Yeah, energy. Yeah, energy in the, like, what's the word? The C word. Like the, not that C word. Like the colloquial way of saying energy. Like, I don't know. Not the scientific definition of energy, but like...
Yeah.
Like if you could say somebody brought a real energy to the performance.
But take the scientific too, like both energies. Yeah, your non-scientific energy of how you're feeling affects people, but then also the energy of your existence affects people too. And I feel like the evolution... I mean, here's my existence. I grew up being told something, and then I found out it was bullshit, and then I'm like, oh, well, just take the history of religion and then try to figure out what they were trying to say. Is there some proof to, not even proof, is there something that was trying to be communicated, but it's so abstract that they created these things to try to communicate that information to you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because we can't even have this conversation, and you're like, well, yeah, I don't believe in religion. It's like, well, yeah, I'm a spiritual person because I believe the non-physical world is bigger than the physical world.
And honestly, like that's pretty much proven at this point. So like to argue with that is almost is so short-sighted to me, to be like, no. There's literally nothing other than what we perceive. Well, what about ultraviolet light, dude? Like, for real?
Yeah.
Like,
do you think that there are entities that exist around us right now that we cannot perceive because of our physical senses?
Yes. I mean...
And I agree with you. And, like, forget about ghosts and demons and spirits and the soul. Forget about everything. If there was something existing next to us that we couldn't perceive physically, could we perceive them on the astral plane? Or could we, you see these, I like the videos of shadow people and whatever. Everyone says that all these things are ghosts. I'm like, the jinn and genies and whatever. It's scary to think that if there is something else here that can perceive us, that is here with us. And I'm like, well, that's scary, but then I also can believe that anything that is life can perceive things. And then I go, oh, I think everything is life. I think fucking rocks are alive. I think air is alive. I feel like... Yeah. So
well, how do you...
Even within a conversation that I'm talking, I change the way that I'm seeing and thinking about stuff. And
I mean, the atoms, the molecules, the atoms themselves are moving, like, of their own accord. And, like, to me, that is life. Like, and you're saying rocks are life. Like, why would they not be life? Like, there is something happening instead of nothing happening. Like, there is matter rearranging and reorganizing itself. There is some type of momentum to matter that has given it, it's reorganizing and rearranging when it should be doing nothing. It shouldn't even be existing. Like,
yeah, and we need some kind of proof. And then I'm like, the favorite thing that I've been looking up recently is if, you know, like, I think trees are alive and that they communicate and that they have, that their perception of the universe is different, but they are communicating and they are aware and they can feel and I don't know, it's
totally,
it's weird. It's weird. So like, you know, I've always felt weird about that same statement of like, oh, God is with you, God is with you. And I'm like, you know, I lived most of my life thinking that somebody's constantly watching me, and I felt shame. But the other side of it is how I wish my mind went was that everything that I'm experiencing, I'm sharing with everything around me.
And there's no shame to feel, sort of like there's no fear to feel. Like, it is a shameful scenario and it is a fearful scenario, like you're talking about. Like, if there's entities around, like, of course that's fucking scary, but at the same time it's like, okay, it is scary, but it's also just the way the world is. So, like, oh yeah, life is terrifying and I'm still growing up. Like,
yeah.
Sure, yes, it's scary, but it's also a little reassuring that it's like, but that's okay. Yes, there are some fucked up entities all over the place, but that's okay. It's part of the world. And
did you see Contact?
I saw bits and pieces in the 90s, and I don't barely remember it.
It's weird. I mean, whatever. Sure, a lot of the movie sucks, but ultimately, like, some of the concepts in it.
Well, the book was... It was Carl Sagan, right?
Oh, I didn't read the book. Yeah, And I love Carl Sagan, and I feel like I feel like Carl Sagan was trying to communicate a lot of things that didn't come out, and he couldn't outright say them because, I mean, I think he was, if there was a Majestic 12, he was a member of it, you know. Like, I think that, sure, I'm big into conspiracy theories, but I have the idea that he is one of these scientists that believed more than what he presented, but couldn't present more because everyone would turn on him. So, you know, when I read his books, he talks about other life, and he tries to, you know, deciding all the Voyager stuff. That's huge. Everything that he came up with was so abstract in the right way of, like, here we are, here's how to find us, here's...
Yeah, I see it the way you're saying, but I don't think it's like a conspiratorial thing. I think it's more of a... He saw the benefit of, like, accessibility and... not going all the way with all the, like, because in the way that, yes, the scientific community would, or the general public would be like, oh yeah, that guy probably does a lot of acid, you know, like if he started talking about all these crazy ideas that I'm sure he thought about all sorts of crazy ideas, and yeah, he did dip his toes into it, but I think it was more like, I can probably change more lives with this, holding back the crazier shit and being a little subtle.
Yeah, totally. Like, do you think about that? I think about that all the time, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I can do anything credible anymore because I have said so many things that, I mean, whatever, I don't care. But I would like to eventually, you know, do something for, you know, I want humanity to be better. Sure, selfishly, I want to take part in the reason why it's better, but I need it to be better. I can't stand the current state of where we're at, you know. Like, I get so enraged when I see, sure, injustices, but on the smaller level, on the micro level, like just companies not taking responsibility for how they're affecting the future, you know. And I think it has to do with their belief system. Listen, if you don't believe in an afterlife or spirituality or God or whatever, it's pretty easy to take everything you can right now and that this one life, this one shot, everything you're working for is for yourself, just to experience it while you're here. And that I just feel like if we had a shift of what the universe is, we don't even contemplate what the universe is. It's already been figured out. I just need to go get my my Pokemon and get my get my razors and eat my ice cream and whatever. It's like
That's my apocalypse plan, actually. Pokemon, razors, and ice cream. But no,
it's like whatever it is, our life has turned into these small wants that don't affect anyone, and it's so hard to even go take part in something that you believe in because it's easy to just enjoy.
Let me throw this at you, man. What you're describing to me sounds like someone in their 20s going into late 20s, and 30s are coming up on them. And to me, that is what I see our species as. If you look at our species and pretend anthropomorphize it and make it an individual, I think we are in like our 20s, and we've learned some really deep shit, and we're figuring shit out, and we think we've got the whole picture figured out, and no one can tell us shit, and our life is not that good, and we're like, why? We've got this shit figured out. I'm paying my rent. What the fuck, man? And that is a very crucial moment, because if you don't get your act together, you're going to end up dying or cementing your life as a miserable failure for the rest of your life.
Oh,
and
that's so beautifully gross.
Going into your 30s is really tough, but it can also be like one of the most rewarding periods if you actually start getting your shit together and realizing, you know what, I did learn a lot of useful shit in my 20s, but you know what, I was also still a fucking idiot.
Dude, I think I love that analogy. It's fucking great. My biggest fear is that I believe that all of these ancient megalithic human societies are way, way older than recorded history. I always have this concept of them connecting to the universe differently. It's like, what if you could use sound as a tool? I feel like sound is how they built the pyramids and how they could cut through things and move things, and it's not manipulation of it. It's understanding the universe better and taking control of the universe. And I feel like there's a lot of information is lost. And
what if I told you that's what we're doing right now? We are using, me and you, my friend, are using sound to manipulate the universe and make it better.
Yeah. I mean, like I feel like I love that because affecting consciousness, I think, is just as important as building, or doing anything physical. But I feel so weirded out about the bubble of life that we are experiencing right now, where we as a country we're killing a lot of people right now.
Yeah.
Just like bombing, having military presence, like being the police that like aren't necessarily that great because we have whoever's in charge has an agenda. Like sure, I don't want to go too crazy down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, but dude, the control of money on the planet is affecting the human race in a negative way.
Sure.
And we can't just try to be happy and try to get people to think about death, that death isn't a finality to make things better. We have to take control of these fucking assholes. I don't mean control. We just have to take away their control. A little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Dude, the military presence of the United States is so fucking crazy right now. We are fucking everywhere. When you look at the Rothschilds, the richest family in the history of humans exists now, and they control all of the most countries' central banks. What happened to our gold? We used to have a bunch of gold that backed our dollar. Sure, at some point the Fed and all these things changed, and now our money is not backed by gold. They're promissory notes. What the fuck happened to the gold? Where did it go? Did they sell the gold? Did it get stolen? Where the fuck did the gold go? Not that even matters. I'm just saying there's some weird things going on where our gold is missing, and no one has ever asked where it went. Fort Knox does not have gold in it. The towers of 9/11, there was a big gold vault at the bottom of those towers. Did they get robbed before it went down? Is the gold just sitting there? Listen, the reason why, if you want to go into
are you trying to bring the Anunnaki into this conversation? Is that what you're doing right now?
Maybe, because listen, there was gold stored in a bank below the Twin Towers. If there was millions of dollars worth of gold buried there, they definitely would have gone down and dug it out. And no matter how many bodies they had to get through to get that gold, whoever owned that gold would go get it out. And that didn't happen. And so, sure, think whatever you want about 9/11, but look at the gold. The fucking follow the money. Where did the money go? Like, just do it for yourself. Just look for a second, just to know that there is a weird presence of humans out there that are driven by something else. I don't know. And sure, with the Anunnaki, you know, the Sumerians, here we have the first culture that was intelligent, that had writing, supposedly, you know. Mm-hmm. I think that there's even older ones than them, but that's what we have on record. It's easy to listen. I watch a lot of Ancient Aliens, but my thing is, I don't believe that aliens helped build the pyramids. I think that we were just smarter than we are now in the connectivity of the universe. Here we have a pineal gland in our brain that has rods and cones in it, but it
like an eye,
which is what we use to see through our eyeballs.
Yeah,
but it's buried in the brain. Can this thing perceive the universe in some other way? Sorry, I went from 9/11 to the Anunnaki to the pineal gland, but
yeah, that's okay. I mean, my problem with a lot of that is, like, I think that it appears to be that there is something there to those ideas, and that there is a lot of evidence for some type of weird thing happening in our past involving something not from this planet, I guess. I'm trying to speak as, like, vaguely as possible, because my biggest issue is with any of the, like, specifics associated with like that mythology. And by mythology, I don't mean a falsehood. I just mean the, you know, like, the stories associated with that, those beliefs. Like, the people responsible for, like, introducing the public to a lot of that stuff, or presenting a lot of that research, have been so consistently, like, they, like, just not credible to me.
Yeah, okay, I accept that.
Like, the guy,
I do. I like the ideas that they're presenting, but, like, I agree. That doesn't mean that they're credible in a lot of ways. Like, to me, Zechariah Sitchin, he had a firm grasp. He was in Bible college, you know, and he had a firm grasp of
Stitchin's like the 12th planet and stuff, right?
Yeah, but he you know, there was a movie in the 70s that came out that was Chariots of the Gods. Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, that's Eric von Daniken.
Daniken made that, not Sitchin?
Well, he wrote the book.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But that all comes from Sitchin's ideas that from him questioning, you know, the Bible and the Sumerians and the just a different interpretation of you know, here's some weird things.
But like, Zechariah Sitchin totally made shit up too, and that's what bothers me. Like, and I'm not.
Yeah, I know. It's like anybody who affects my abstract beliefs also can appear so not credible in so many ways. It's
also
nuts.
Let me throw this out there. Like, I don't get paid to research this shit. So if there's any listeners listening that want to contest that, and they're like, no, he didn't make shit up, feel free to please get a hold of us. I would love to hear from you. Just don't yell at me. Like, from what I've gathered, he made shit up. And if I'm wrong, I will admit I'm wrong. Because like I said, it actually feels good to do that. So try it once in a while. Because if you're wrong and he made the shit up, just admit you're fucking wrong. Not you, Willy.
Yeah.
But then he presents a lot of other shit that he didn't make up. That's like, he's like Michael Moore. Like, God damn it, Michael Moore, you're trying to take down George W. Bush. Stop making shit up. You don't gotta make shit up.
Oh man, he's so close to meaning something to humanity, but like he ruins it for himself. Did you watch the documentary he did about what was it? Basically, he was going around to other countries to see what it would be like to be there, to live there, sick. I don't know, whatever. It was a great documentary, but like he'd already lost everybody before that, and like,
yeah,
I don't know, like it matters. Your credibility matters so much when you're talking about beliefs, and like all of our politicians are all sex crazed pieces of shit that like follow the money, for themselves. And it's easy for me to say that. There's a couple bad apples that ruin the whole bunch. Yeah, sure. I'm sure there's a lot of people that got into it to do good things, and they're trying to. But there's a system in place, and I'm not trying to be negative about it, because I consider going into politics, because I'm like, if you really want to affect your environment, like, you can jump up and do something. And
Dude, I think it was Michael Moore, actually, that when he was like 14 or something, just like ran for some local office and won because he was literally the only person that ran.
Oh, okay. That's I didn't know that. That's cool.
Look it up. See if there's any like local offices that no one's running for, and run. You'll fucking win.
It's just so weird, because then it's, well, yeah, whatever. Okay, here's a weird thing. I mean, like, I always talk about I want my environment to be a better place for, sure, my kid, but the future of everyone. And I'm like, well, everyone's so different, and I've heard people say, like, well, why do I got to pay taxes for education? I don't have kids. I'm like, but so that means that you don't care about, our education. I'm not even going to get into it. If you think that fuck, whatever, shit.
Yeah. I'm still gonna complain when I go to the doctor and they don't know shit. Like, but I'm not gonna pay for education. Go fuck yourself. Like,
yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm glad I've spent my whole life playing video games. But
if you're not going to be glad about it, then that was a life wasted. So
yeah, I know. And I'm like, man, what the fuck? Like,
well, no, if you're happy about it, it's not.
Yeah. But I'm like, you look at what's happening now, and like, I wanted to do I might do a sketch about selling like a VR couch. It's like, oh, I'll sell you this couch. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. You can put it on your VR device and just always look at your couch. Like the games are getting more abstract, yeah, sure, but it's like the things are mattering less also. And sure, it's easy for me to make big blanket statements like that, but it's like I feel like we need to go back into consciousness and, as a society, think about what we're doing here. The recorded history, those humans were as smart as us, same size brain, part of a community, trying to figure shit out. It's not like when the wheel came along, people just kept getting smarter and smarter and smarter. They had the same brain capacity as we do today, like most of recorded history humans. But this current state.
I will say, well, what I think it is, and you're right, you are totally right. I think, and what's funny is I have thought about this stuff before, but I've never thought these thoughts I'm about to express before, and I actually really like this. Cognition, like, increases with how many, like, framing devices you've given yourself, like mental, sort of like once you have a new word for something you don't know before, it actually does help you. Like, you're able to think about things better because of that. And so, like, no, it doesn't necessarily make you smarter, but it does help your cognition. So it's like you're not necessarily smarter, but your ability to generate productive thoughts quicker has increased. So in a way, what are we going to call that if not smarter? But
I agree.
But so, like, sure, maybe we are smarter than we were then, because it probably can't be argued that we have more framing devices in our minds now that make it a lot easier to produce these cognitive thoughts much faster so that we're able to live in the modern world. But there are certain framing devices which we have lost that we used to have, which has made certain types of cognition and recognition almost impossible for us, to the point where people refuse to even like get it when you're trying to explain it to them in simple terms, and where you have to meditate for like years of your life to even like get back to a point where you're like, oh shit, no, it doesn't mean the way the way you're looking at the world is an illusion, but it doesn't mean that it's fake or made up. It just means you've lost a few entirely different ways of looking at the world that would like drastically change the way you are seeing the universe.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely it would change your cognition, and in other ways probably make your cognition more productive, you know.
Yeah, do you look up like ancient civilizations much? Like, you know, sure it's easy to bring up the Mayans, but like when you look at civilizations that were aware of the precession of the equinox, you know, here's an idea that a lot of people still don't even know about, and they had calendars for it. It's just the timeline of the precession of the equinox. It's like 13,000 years. So for them to have that calendar, I feel like, how do you grow some corn when you know that there's this 13,000 years cycle that you're such a small part of? You know, I mean, I'm just saying that like their perspective of the universe was definitely more grand.
Yeah, it's insane, and like.
But they would also sacrifice people for their gods.
That's true, and that's fucking crazy, but I think there's a legitimate ground for the tradition of sacrifice that came from like legitimate like spiritual traditions, but that to me is the point where dogma and the spiritual tradition not being absorbed and actually understood by the population, by the society, like makes it I don't know, like, so like sacrifice, like the idea that you have to sacrifice things is a incredibly advanced idea that like only human beings have.
Yeah.
No other animal is really able to consider the benefits of sacrifice. A dog would never save some of its food for the next day. Like, that's ridiculous. I've got all this awesome food to eat. I'll worry about. They wouldn't even worry about worrying about tomorrow. Like, they're just like, cool, food, I'm gonna eat it. No animal could come up with the idea that you could sacrifice something and that would have a positive effect. So I think that. Like, that was one of the very early rudimentary like skills we developed as animals, slowly becoming a different type of animal, when we were suddenly like, wait, holy shit, like, can you imagine being like one of the first people to be living basically as an animal and then suddenly be like, oh my god, you don't have words, but you just suddenly had a flash of insight for the first time in your life, and you're like, wow, like, hold on, if I don't do this today, like, that's actually gonna help tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what's funny.
Or like, wait, if I don't like kill this thing, it might actually help me tomorrow because maybe he'll help me, or I don't, whatever the first thing was. My bad.
That's such a funny thought. Is there an animal out there that has thought about tomorrow in any way?
If so, it'd probably be like a crow or something, I'd imagine, right? Like, I feel like they have that type of intelligence.
Because, like you picture a dog, you know, a dog being like, oh, I'll get food. Like, sure, they have routines. They get up every morning and there's food. Do they know the food is coming tomorrow? Can they think about tomorrow?
Right? That's a really good question. I'm trying to think, like, you don't think a dolphin would. They're really smart, but they live under the ocean. They're always half awake and half asleep. They probably have no concept of tomorrow. Yeah. I wonder if primates do. Like, dogs, I can't imagine do. Cats, I can't imagine do. I wonder if primates or birds do.
Oh, what? Like what about it? I mean, here's a bad example, but like a squirrel saving a nut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I guess a dog burying a bone, that doesn't mean tomorrow, but...
Huh. Maybe that might put a damper on my sacrifice idea there, but squirrels know how to do it.
Well, I've always contemplated, like thinking of a soul, if like, you know, when you hear about people that believe in the afterlife and they do things because it helps them get better status for their afterlife, you know, whatever that means. I just mean, like, I don't mean someone, you know, I'm thinking like in terms of like people's whose religions where you benefit from, like, everyone's an enemy of you that doesn't believe in your religion, or I don't know, but the fact that if they do something here and what's up?
Maybe this is a thought that just occurred to me in the same, because we were just talking about that sacrifice thing, but like maybe if these ideas, these religious ideas that are at the root of so many different religions, they must be really old beliefs then, I'd imagine, if they're so deeply embedded into religions all over the world, like rewards in an afterlife. You know what I mean? That's in Norse mythology, that's in Zoroastrian mythology, that's in Japanese mythology, that's in Greek mythology, that's in Christian mythology. So like Native American mythology. Maybe if language hadn't been developed, if you just shift your idea of like the word life to mean what you're experiencing, so like that is the present moment, then doing good deeds in the present moment will help you get good things in the afterlife, if in the after the present moment. And I don't know, maybe I'm getting way out there by like making that leap, but
no, that's cool. I like that.
If they're very early beliefs,
because the definition of life is so different, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, to a half animal, you know, to a half primate, half human, that's like, wait, do good after you get good, you know? I don't know, like,
yeah. And you know, like interpreting the Bible has always been a weird thing for me, because here we are, we've translated it, and we haven't done an updated version of the translation like since the King James version, basically. Yeah, sure, there's the version where it's just, I forget what it's called, the standard whatever. I have that Bible, and I'd read it and be like, this is weird, because it doesn't sound all mid-century, whatever.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But like, even that was an interpretation of the King James Version. It wasn't a reinterpretation of the translation. And a lot of that translation is lost. And listen, I bring up the Bible because a lot of people treat the Bible as a credible source of history. So it's weird when, like, the Dead Sea Scrolls show up, and there's a lot of weird texts in there, and so like these, Christianity and Catholicism, they're like afraid of these new texts being found because they've already hidden away so many texts that, like, to me, the corruption of religion, and I'm not knocking anybody that believes in anything, but like, please look at the history of the corruption of the information that is being kept out of their teachings.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. I mean, like, the Dead Sea Scrolls show up, and it like turns their religion upside down, and a lot of people like argue the validity of it. Sure, but like, if those are real, then you have to adjust your beliefs within the information that has come from that. I don't know. That's what's always bothered me about religion, is that they don't change with the times or with information changing, or...
in what way is
It's an easy way to control.
Yeah, in what way is refusing to adapt your beliefs to new information anything but stubborn? And I don't mean that in an attacking way, but I mean, like, that, to me, that's not what faith is. To me, like, the idea that you have faith in God or faith in your spirituality or like faith in the universe is an entirely different idea. And I'm pretty sure, again, I'm not a fucking anthropologist, but I'm pretty sure that's backed up by looking at the original text in Aramaic or whatever the fuck it was written in, in Hebrew, that doesn't use the word belief. It doesn't say like you have to have belief in God. That's not what faith in God means. It means like have faith in God, in that poetic concept of God. It doesn't mean have faith that the mythological figure of Jehovah will rescue you. That's not what or exists factually. It means, I know shit's fucked up, but set your intent right. Set your, like, try to get your mind right so you can figure out how to set your intent right and set your direction right.
Yeah.
And then trust in the meta system and in what the poetic concept of God, and have faith in that whatever's happening is, fuck is this? Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's a much more powerful belief than, no, I'm just supposed to believe this because of where I geographically happen to be born and my parents were more likely to tell me to. Like, and again, not saying that in an attacking way, but like, what other reason do you have to just be like, no, I'm just supposed to believe this? What?
I know. That's what I always try to say, is that, like, you should examine why you believe the things that you believe. Why do you believe them? Like, if you have no reason why to ask why, then you're kind of closing off parts of the world. Humanity is what I say. You know, like, most people believe in something because it was taught to them, but that doesn't give it more validity than somebody who was taught something different. And so, I don't know, I'm not saying we need to learn everything, but it sure would help humanity if we learned everything.
Yeah, and there's like 7.5 billion people on the planet. Like, why are you so sure that you just happen to get born into the right, very specific community, and so you don't even have to give other ideas a chance, and that it's bad to... I mean, I get it. And again, I'm not saying this about anybody that's like... If you have a genuine belief in the religion because you have thought about it and you do feel intuitively about it, then I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying, if you're really just like, no, I refuse to think about it, this was the first one I heard about, and it says not to question it, so I'm not going to because I'm scared of going to hell. And it's like, oh, word. Then well, that sucks that you're not thinking because you're scared of the consequences. Like, I'm telling you, you'll be okay. Like, think about shit.
Yeah, and how did you feel when, I always load my questions and try to lead, but when the Pope announced that if aliens exist in the universe, they are also children of God.
I guess by my personal definition of God, well, of course they are. Like, of course. Now, if he said something about Jesus, that would have got a little weird. I'm like, okay, I don't know what relation they have to Jesus, but
yeah, I thought it was weird that he made that. Sure, it's very progressive and forward for him to say that, but I just thought it was weird because he didn't have to, and it just made me think that was maybe trying to be planned to get it into your head to think that to make
aliens,
to help people believe that aliens are real. Like, you didn't have to address that, you know. I don't know. It was weird. Huh. It's almost like they were afraid that aliens are fucking real. They're here. Our definition of aliens is wrong because they've lived on Earth longer than we have. Some of them. There's different races, and they were afraid that there's so much information that eventually disclosure is going to happen, and the truth will come out that there are entities visiting Earth that have nothing to do with us and we can't defend ourselves from, whatever, just so that the religion wouldn't fall apart for some people because they don't address aliens at all.
You know, that's...
I don't know. It was a big money thing to me. They're in the business of belief, and so to leak out little beliefs is like on purpose.
With regards to aliens, so like if... I don't know why, I guess this doesn't sound like it's with regards to aliens, but to keep it tied to the God issue almost, but still, if God is an alien, in the sense that if we were created by a being, if there was a conscious being that created us, and I don't even mean the Anunnaki, it could be Jehovah, then... To me, like, encountering that, let's say I died, and I can't prove that the Bible isn't true. So, like, let's say I died, and I went outside the pearly gates, it was St. Peter, it was straight pop culture heaven, and God was like, no, like, all that criteria was legit. Like, I am Jehovah, there's St. Peter's, Jesus, like, and you didn't take it all seriously. That faith part actually did mean blindly believe, not just to trust me. So you're going to go to hell, like, or whatever. I'd be like, oh man, this sucks. It would really suck. I'm not trying to minimize that, to be sent to hell. I'm not saying it would suck if it turned out that your religion was true, if that's your religion, but it would suck to be told that and now I'm going to hell. But to me, that wouldn't shake at all the self-evidence to me of what God actually is. And I would just be like, oh shit, so there's some weird being named Jehovah that made us. But that's not God. What God is a deeper, more real thing than that. And I guess I'm going to have to keep up my meditation practice in hell, because that puts me in touch with an understanding of the thing that I can only refer to by this poetic concept of God. There's no other word in the history of our 200,000 years of being here that we've come up with that suits it better than God. And the word works well enough that I don't think we should make a new word. And I think we should get our heads out of our asses. And that goes for the monotheists and the atheists alike, because you're both right. You're both fucking right, and without both of you being right, both of you would be wrong. So, like, and you're both wrong too. But I don't know. I got off where I wanted to ask you though, like, with God, if God was an alien, then in that sense, that if there was some entity that created us, and whether or not that vibes with the thing that I choose to refer to God, or the concept I choose to refer to as God. If there was an entity or a being that created us, I don't know. I basically, before we sign off tonight, I would love to get a chance to talk about that, whether or not, what your thoughts on whether or not we were created by an entity or entities. And you had mentioned at the start yourself or man being God. And I think those two things, I think we'd be remiss to not touch upon that before the end.
Yeah, I always say, I always contemplate this, that what if creation was the creator? The idea that being
Bingo.
able to have consciousness is what consciousness is. And what is it then? Is it matter choosing to have... I don't know. I can't even talk about it. But that idea that
Yup.
basically that we can't figure it out. Well, I'm not saying we're not capable of it, but at some extent maybe we are incapable because of the language that we've created that we can't grasp these concepts that are so abstract. Sure, I mean, even you can't even talk math to someone without having to go abstract in some sense. But I'm like, have we lost something because we can't communicate the abstract ideas?
Well, we, by nature, we are inherently limited. If we weren't limited, we would be God. If God is omnipresent and omnipotent and knows everything and is everywhere and is everything, what does something that has everything lack? And that is limitation. And
yeah, and
so,
in that same vein, I think that like, okay, let's say we are entities that are all connected to the same consciousness when we are a soul outside of this body. How would you learn anything? How would you learn anything? The only way to learn would be to disconnect from the group. Go have your own experience and then come back with everything that you've learned. And to me, that has a good idea of what life is disconnecting from the source.
How else would God find limitation but to shine that light through several little different holes? To go back to that metaphor, like
yeah, and that's a great metaphor. Yeah,
you're right though. It's hard to discuss whenever I like get my brain on this like track of like the nature of God, the nature of the universe. I feel like God, the universe, reality, consciousness, life, I feel like all those words are actually interchangeable in a way. And
that's good that you think that, because our definitions are what most people argue about. But go on.
I think the thing is God, all right, if I can try. This is so hard. I'm going to try. There's something in... If you're familiar with the concept of yin-yang, that like yin-yang represents existence because it is a flux of two different natures. They can be represented by masculine, feminine, chaos, order, dark, light, up, down, good, evil. They can be manifested just by opposites in general. And again, I believe something's not real. But anyway, so like, but in that sense, it does seem to be evident. It even says it in the Bible that like God is good. Well, why is God good and not God? What? Not just because you said so, and I'm not even saying it's not true. It may be self-evident, but let's explore why. There has to be a reason why then. Why is that good? Why is that better than the opposite? And why do certain like behavior that, you know, isn't generally encouraged in religion, that generally seems to vibe with what is in accordance with, you say people don't live in, you know, in harmony with the universe and stuff. And like, why is it better to do that? And like, there's this weird because at the end of the day, if you look at the broad picture, the bigger picture, if life and death, if chaos and order are all two parts of the same thing, and reality cannot exist without both sides of the coin. I think that's what Buddhism means when they say all existence is suffering, all existence is pain. It's not negative. It's that like without that, there would be no existence. That is the quality that defines existence, because without that, it's just pleasure. And then if it's just pleasure, what is pleasure standing in opposition to? There's nothing. But like, you hit a wall and a block at a certain point where you're like, but why is there anything and not just nothing? And to me, the only answer I could come to is something like God or whatever maybe wanted to, if God only lacks limitation, then God would seek limitation. But what would cause an undisturbed harmony to seek? It's hard to talk about this stuff, but and that's where you hit a wall, and it's this really weird. And of course, we will never know. By nature, we must be limited. And
I have issues with good and evil. Like, I don't think evil can exist. I think people can do evil things, but I'm like, this is a bad example, but let's say that a man and a woman decided to have a child because they wanted to impart their knowledge onto the future generation. So they laid down in the woods to have sex, and that as they laid down, there were these smaller entities that were just as intelligent, but they were just really small, and they laid on them and killed them while they were trying to do something good. But they killed this whole civilization of intelligent beings trying to do something good. That's a bad example of evil. All I'm saying is that like we have a perspective of good and evil, and it's like, well, like, I believe aliens are here on the earth, and whatever they're doing, they're not affected by us, and so they don't need to be like, hey, we're here, who are you guys? It's in the same way that when we clear out a forest, we don't go talk to all the owls and monkeys and be like, hey, we're going to tear all this down, do you guys want to move? Or we don't communicate to them because we see them as less than. So if there was an alien entity who was here just mining gold or whatever, just getting water, they don't need to communicate to us whether they think that they're smarter or not, because they're just doing their own thing, and they can't communicate with us. Maybe most alien abduction cases have a telepathic element to it, and so maybe they can already see our thoughts and they don't want to communicate with us. Like, if God exists, if there was a God that is more the version of the Christian version, that is like a man in the clouds, you just picture him walking around and trying to talk to people, and he'd have a hard time liking anybody. You know, and what if God was shopping at Vaughn's? Like, I don't know. I'm just saying, no matter what you believe, I think that everyone needs to question why they believe things. You don't need to question your beliefs. Question why you believe it. And maybe that'll make your belief stronger, or maybe it'll make you find something else, whatever. But if you don't question why you believe something, then don't have a conversation with anybody about your beliefs. Because you'll never, you won't have a conversation. And that, that's why people don't talk about, religion and politics, and because your belief is so personal. But wouldn't this place be better if everyone knew you personally?
Well,
That was a mouthful, and I'm sorry if you're offended.
That was
Sorry,
it was
dude.
a mouthful, but it was a lot of fun. And I just have one question to ask you, Craig, as our proxy for the listener. After listening to that, do you agree?
That's a great question, Nathan. Do you agree?
With everything I said? Yes.
I
Every last thing I said, it's the truth. No. I may have even said things as a devil's advocate. Ooh.
Well, I guess I would have to respond with, in true fashion to my belief structure, I don't know.
I
I don't know. And that's my easy out.
Which I think most people that identify as atheists are actually agnostics, too.
I'm just woke and realize it.
Well, they are. They're like, atheists believe in no God. Agnostics don't believe in God. Like, atheists are actively like, there is no God.
Yeah.
And agnostics are like, I don't know, man.
And I'm like, the atheist thing makes the most sense to me, but what if not? I mean, anything can be. There's just too much unknown to be able to be like, that's for sure.
I think nothingness is just as... what else could God be?
Wow.
Can't be something if it created existence.
Right. Well, they wouldn't believe that. They would just think that. They wouldn't consider a random explosion of molecules being
No, that's
God.
not. That couldn't be God. That's an aspect of existence. You're limiting it by defining what it is.
To the Big Bang.
Well, once you define something, you're limiting it. That's why a deity couldn't even be God, because once you've defined that, you've given it limitations, boundary, form. You've given it form, which if you're giving something form, you're naturally
It can't be
excluding,
omnipotent, right?
Well, what is form? You can't distinguish form if everything is all one.
I have to ask, did you already say all this?
I don't even remember, man. I don't know, man.
There's too much, man. So yeah, so
late.
you're agnostic like me, because or at least agnostic about if you talked about this.
I'm agnostic, but also monotheistic and atheistic. Polytheistic, not so much, but yeah, I am. I am. I'm polytheistic.
Okay.
I am. I'm polytheistic, monotheistic, atheistic, and agnostic.
I gotta say, I love most of the polytheistic stories, especially
They're great stories.
Egyptian and Greek.
Yeah.
Sure, Roman too. Somehow
that's
you
just
switched
Greek.
over to Catholic, but I don't know.
Well, the Roman myths are basically just 50 Shades of Grey. But
50 Shades of Greek.
50 Shades of Greek, that's what they are, yeah.
So the Roman one is basically the mom smut
Yeah,
of
they
mythology.
replaced the word Zeus with Jupiter, replaced Edward with Christian Grey, and replaced Twilight with Snowflake.
That doesn't add up.
No, I don't say this like, oh, I'm all those things as some cop out or like, yeah, everything. No, like I'm certain, even in my uncertainty, of each of those, and I don't know. They complement each other. None of them could be true without the other also being true.
If one is true, then there's always is true. And that's all I got to say is about that.
There's so much that I wanted to talk about that we didn't have time to talk about. I wanted to talk about like the concept of intelligent design. I wanted to talk about so much.
It's very far out, man. And that's not like in a mocking way either. It's just, that's as matter-of-factly as I could put it.
And if you enjoyed that conversation, please, you should really check out our talk about Terrence McKenna.
Oh, yeah, Willy Roberts.
Yeah, me, Craig, and Willy sat down, did that. Me, Craig, and Willy also sat down and had a talk about envisioning a future for humanity, which...
Damn straight.
Both of those conversations, if you enjoyed this one, you're going to love. And also...
on the same wavelength.
Any episodes with Jeremy as well. Jeremy Davis in the early episodes, Jeremy Vine in the later ones.
Yeah.
Same guy. Yeah, any episodes with Jeremy and any episodes with Willy are going to be right up your alley.
And any episodes with Craig. No.
Any episodes with Craig. Every episode except...
All of them?
Except the first one with Jeremy, I think. It's the only one you're not on.
It's a good track record.
And you could definitely go subscribe to Real Life Sci-Fi. They're on Starburns Audio. It's a podcast network. And actually, they lost a bunch of subscribers because the
whole thing with Earwolf, right?
No, not Earwolf.
Or
it was
Feral Audio.
Feral Audio.
Collapsed. Yeah, so
Feral
that's why
Wolf. Ear Audio.
Whoa. Feral.
That's so weird how the anyway.
Will Ferrell's personal audio.
Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell. He's a podcast network.
Will Ferrell.
All right. Yeah, the network like dissolved, and so naturally you lose subscribers regardless of the quality of the content you put out.
Yeah, you have to make a conscious effort to go and resubscribe on the new network.
Yeah, and some of them might not even know where to find you.
Where to go. Not what happened to it is what I would commonly say.
You were like two ships that passed in the night.
It's poetic, man.
It's poetic, man. Yeah, please. We had a fantastic conversation with them about magic, and that's really gonna like magic with a K, like real world Aleister Crowley shit.
Real magic, not The Gathering, not silly parlor tricks like John Constantine does. Hellblazer's a hell of a
You ask Alan Moore, he met John Constantine in a bar once. Well, he didn't meet him, he saw him, and he regrets not going up and talking to him.
Fucking awesome, man. The things that go on in his head, I want to do the peyote he does.
Grant Morrison's like, yeah, I saw him too.
That's not bad.
All right.
While you're subscribing to them, just why don't you go and subscribe to us if you haven't already?
Fair Enough Podcast. Also, if you like the show, you're going to love our other shows. We got Fair Enough Podcast. That's the same one I just said.
Yeah. Fair Point and Sylph Radio.
Sylph Radio is for the Pokemon fans. Fair Point is just like Fair Enough, but the same.
Bigger spectrum.
It's so goddamn like the same podcast.
You ask, do you want ice cream? They both say yes.
They both say, no, I am a podcast. How could I enjoy the ice cream?
I cannot consume things.
And if you have any musings on the nature and concept of God and reality, please.
May they have mercy on your soul.
No, yeah, you're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to think. Don't think about these things. Indoctrinate yourself. Well, now that we're all the same religion, after listening to this podcast, I would love to hear your thoughts on Twitter, Facebook, or any other social media platform.
And mostly give me money. That's like the point of it, right?
Yes. Now that we're, I am actually a licensed minister, so
give him money.
With the what's it called? The Universal Life Church. With the what's it called? I forgot the name of my church. Can you see how dedicated to the cause I am?
You definitely don't seem like a fraud.
So give me money.
Monies, please. Monies, please.
There is a donate button on secretroommultimedia.com. I'm not kidding. It's there. And actually, give money to Pretty Kitty Fuzzy if you can. We really want to see that thing get made. And
yes.
Where can they hit us up on these social media platforms, like I said?
Definitely on Facebook at Fairpoint Podcast or Twitter at Fairpoint Pod.
Yeah, just remember it's Fairpoint Podcast because that's the main show. We'll probably make a Fair Enough one eventually, but
it's got to come sooner than later.
Sooner or later, it's going to have to.
We'll do it. But for now, it's Fairpoint Pod. You know, you could also hit us up there as means of communicating with us, that and Facebook.
And secretroommultimedia.com.
That's got its own Facebook. That's
the
fun.
Hub for everything. Every damn thing. You can find the Pokemon podcast. You can find all our videos, all our music.
It's the easiest way to figure out what we put out this week.
Yeah, we got a Jurassic Park show coming soon and more on the horizon.
Spelled M-O-A-R, because poor literacy.
Oh, yeah, we're envisioning a future, baby.
More, baby.
From the secret room and beyond.
Ooh. I'm Craig Lewis, and I got the chills.
And I am Nathan Capisser, and I do too.
Yeah, Can you please close the window?
My bad.
Thank you.
Have a week.
I'd also like to try doing some God experiments. Like using the podcast, both of our podcasts, whatever, to be like, hey, what if this is just a bad pitch, but like if there was some like certain time to like pray or believe or ask the universe to get a bunch of like-minded people all asking the same question at the same time, if that can affect anything. I don't know. I'm trying to think of things to do.
It's interesting. Have you ever experimented with the I Ching or the I Ching? You're not supposed to like take it lightly and just do it to experiment. You're only supposed to really consult it when you really feel lost and really unsure of what to do and really feel like it's necessary to. And it is the only divination tool I've ever used, and anyone who I've heard about that's used it or recommended use it has uncannily given me the exact direction I needed in a way that it'll blow your mind with how specifically. And I know cold reading and I know that the tarot reading, a lot of that stuff is designed to be so broad, but I mean, there's 64 different Chinese parables, and there's interpretation from several different centuries, and if you ever do it.
But when you say go do it, what do you do?
The way it was done in
do you go to somebody?
Form. No. You can look it all up online. There's 64 hexagrams. This is what Terence McKenna actually based the time wave thing on.
Oh, time wave zero.
Yeah. He thinks it's a model for time. And whether or not it's a model for time, it's pretty uncanny.
Yeah, that's when I am going to look that up. But yeah, that's when he kind of lost me. I was like, what do you get into, man?
I think he was onto something and then went a little too far into speculation. But I think he was onto something initially. But there's these 64 hexagrams. So the idea is, in its oldest form, you would draw, or you'd take stalks of wheat, and that's not really applicable to the modern day, but hundreds and hundreds of years ago they started throwing coins. So you could throw 2 coins.
That's what I was just looking at. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you do it a certain amount of times, and you draw broken or unbroken lines, and once you've done it 6 times or something, you do it 3 times and then invert them or something like that. And you're supposed to focus on the issue, not ask a direct question, but just focus on your entire general issue you're approaching it for. And don't ask it a direct question, because it doesn't answer direct questions. But it just kind of gives you insight into the sort of time period you are living in, so that you'll hopefully be able to discern a appropriate way to act with more insight as to what's going on around you right now. And the idea is that time does go through these phases. So if you can figure out what phase you're going through right now, sort of when you're there seems to be heartbreak in the air, everyone's breaking up, or everyone's having somebody die, there does really seem to be those things happening. And so I don't know, you focus, you sit there, you toss the coins, and until you just really feel like it's natural to do it, and then you compose your hexagram, you read the interpretations, the original story, the interpretations, and think about it yourself. And every time I've ever done it or advised somebody to do it, it's blown my mind. And if it doesn't do it, that sucks. But
no, I'm gonna try it.
But yeah, I would say I feel guilty not telling you, respect it. Don't try it just to be I want to see if this works. You know what I mean? Keep it in your back pocket for when you really are faced with a heavy issue that you don't know how to proceed forward with, and it can be a useful tool, I think. But,
Word.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm there. I've got questions that are there in that realm.
Hey, yeah, I imagine you do with being a new father and everything, man. That's and I don't know what's going on in your life, but everyone's always got something going on in their life. But
yeah.